FPL Game Week 34 final decisions. The biggest double game week of the entire season is about to begin, and we've had some very late but chaotic injury news to the likes of Matheus Cunha, to the likes of Erling Haaland as well. Today, we're going to take you through the last things you need to know going into Game Week 34 to make those final decisions for this double game week. We'll cover captaincy, we'll cover injury news, we'll cover players to buy. We will also cover a free hit draft as well. Now that all the European fixtures are out of the way, now that the press conferences are out of the way, you can be starting to lock in your free hits, and we'll be deciding what I'm going to do with my transfers this week as well. What is up, everyone? FPL Harry here. Before we dive in, 1,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you are new around here. And we're going to start with the big bits of injury news for the week. Number one is Erling Haaland. We saw him go off after 90 minutes in the Champions League game. Apparently, he asked Pep to be taken off. Basically, Pep in his press conference gave us absolutely nothing. He was asked and he said, "We will see." And then someone asked a bit of a follow-up question being like, is he 50-50? What's the issue? And he said, "We will see again." So basically, we have absolutely no information. The thing to remember with this Manchester City game in Game Week 34 is it's not actually for another week. They don't play until the Thursday in Game Week 34 because at the weekend they have a FA Cup semi-final. Now, we'll know whether he's in the squad for the FA Cup semi-final. Unfortunately, that won't be until after the FPL deadline, most likely. So we won't really know that much. Now, you can bench him, you can sell him, you can start him. We just don't really know, and it's a very difficult one for me to offer an opinion on. I have Erling Haaland at the moment, and I'd probably say he's about a 60% chance of playing in that game. If you've got a first sub of someone like a Cole Palmer as well, you can absolutely hold on him, but we have no real information to go on Erling Haaland. Now, two players we do have more information on, both play for Wolves, and that is Aït-Nouri and Matheus Cunha, and it was not a good press conference for Wolves in terms of injury news. First up is Aït-Nouri, who said he won't be available to start against Arsenal. He might get some minutes off the bench, but he's not going to be starting that game. Given that they do then play Bournemouth a few days later midweek, there is a risk that he doesn't start either games in the double. Now, there aren't loads of defenders this week that I actually think are worth transfers, especially worth a hit. So I wouldn't sell Aït-Nouri for a hit, but if you have a transfer to move elsewhere, I probably would. Now, the other one is Matheus Cunha, the most highly bought player in FPL in terms of forwards this week, has been ruled out of the Arsenal game. He felt something last game and he will not play against Arsenal, being ruled out of that one, which will make him a significant doubt for the Bournemouth game. And I'd be surprised if he starts. I'd be surprised if he plays any minutes in that game. So if you're on free hit or you own Cunha, I would be looking elsewhere this week. A few more bits of injury news, starting off with cheap forwards. Richards, actually of Crystal Palace, has been back in Crystal Palace training, so he might be okay, as has Branthwaite of Everton. Him and Calvert-Lewin, fingers crossed that they will both be involved for Everton against Nottingham Forest and then against Liverpool. Now, it is two quick games in quick succession. Will Calvert-Lewin start both? Not 100% confident on that, but Branthwaite does look like he's back, which is a boost if you own Jordan Pickford like me. The other one at Manchester City is Kevin De Bruyne. We got a more positive update on him than we did on Erling Haaland, and it looks like Kevin De Bruyne will be available. I've had lots of questions asking for updates on some of the Newcastle players, particularly Kieran Trippier, asking for updates on Spurs players like Richarlison and Pedro Porro. Unfortunately, because they don't have a fixture this weekend, their Game Week 34 fixture is not until the midweek of Game Week 34. There was not a press conference and there will not be a press conference. There'll be no update from either Newcastle, Spurs or Brighton before Game Week 34 deadline, and we will get one midweek next week before their matches in Game Week 34. Now, the big thing for this week that we need to talk about is Liverpool. Trying to predict Liverpool minutes in this double is really difficult, and what I've got here is my prediction of the Liverpool players starting both games in the double. I've used a bit of my opinion, the minutes we've seen midweek, bit of injury news, and asked a few Liverpool fans as well. Completely agree, or completely know that there'll be some of you in the comments who disagree with some of the numbers we've got here, and that is absolutely fine. Basically, we're guessing. We don't know what the percentage chances are. We don't know how fully fit players are. We don't know how many minutes they are capable of playing. But this is my prediction. Alisson and Van Dijk are naturally the most secure, followed by McAllister and probably Mo Salah as well. Now, Mo Salah playing 180 minutes, 90 in both, seems unlikely, but I would expect him to start both in the double. Then Luis Diaz feels like the next most nailed attacker, with Darwin Núñez only getting about a 60% chance of starting both. It was going to be lower until he was rested or didn't start in Europe on Thursday evening. Basically, the fitness of Diogo Jota, which is complete unknown at the moment, has a massive impact on Darwin Núñez. So if you think Jota's not going to start a game, then Darwin likely goes up. Whereas if you think Jota might start a game, then Darwin Núñez goes down. Now, the one that really creates a bit of debate is Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold. Robertson played 80 minutes. Trent played 70 minutes midweek in Europe. Is Robertson fit enough to play these games? And then the next thing to remember is, of course, in game week 35, they are the 12:30 kickoff. So Klopp doesn't just need to look at the double. He's got to look at the Thursday night European fixture, then the double, and then a 12:30 kickoff away at West Ham. 4 games in 9 days for Liverpool. The chances of most of their players playing all 4 and starting all 4 is very, very unlikely. Now, the thing to mention about the attackers, Liverpool have actually scored as many goals in the last 25 minutes of the games as they have in the first half of games so far this season. So for attackers, it's a little bit less worrying if they don't start a game. But of course, for a defender, you lose out on the clean sheet if they keep one and they don't start the game. For me, I'm a cautious manager. Those of you who watch me know that from me. I would be picking Van Dijk, and I would be going Van Dijk if I was picking a defender. Robertson has slightly more upside, and he comes with slightly more risk. Trent has the most upside, and he comes with the most risk. For me, I don't think Trent starts both in the double. That's my opinion. I think Robertson probably will, but there is a decent amount of risk that he doesn't, and I think Van Dijk obviously does. If I buy a Liverpool defender this week, and we'll talk about when it gets to my team, I would go Van Dijk. If you are on free hit this week, I would also go Van Dijk. If you're chasing and you want a punt and you disagree with these minutes and you want to go for Robertson or Trent, absolutely be my guest. But you have to understand that there is a risk that comes with owning some of these more rotation-prone Liverpool players and defenders as well. Now looking at a few of the hot topic questions of the week. First of all, is it worth taking hits for doublers? Personally, I don't look at loads of doublers that are actually worth a hit this week. I imagine most of you have Salah, most of you have Saka, most of you have an Arsenal defender and have some transfers to use in and around it. I definitely don't think there are any defenders or goalkeepers who are worth a hit. If you have a Dubravka, you have a potential, single game week goalkeeper, I'd probably just play them, and particularly in the defense as well. I don't expect massive of clean sheets in this double. Going forward, you look at the likes of Eze. Is Foden to Eze worth a hit? Is something I'm getting asked a lot. Probably not, but I understand why you would do it. If you're chasing, you want an extra doubler, then absolutely fine. But it's probably pretty close about whether they outscore them by 4 points and it's worth a hit. So generally thinking this double is worth to be erring on the side of caution, but we are just 5 weeks left between now and the end of the season. So if you're chasing rank, then I can understand why you take a hit for an extra doubler. But if you're happy with where you are, I don't think the hits are necessarily worth the risk. Now, the next one is if you're not on free hit 34, you're not wildcarding next week, who should you be looking to buy? Now, still looking at doublers this week, the likes of Arsenal, Liverpool should be a priority. But if you are looking at single game week options, Manchester City, Newcastle, Manchester United all have good fixtures this week, all have a nice run of fixtures over the next few weeks between now and the end of the season, and they all double in game week 37 as well. So if you're looking outside of doublers, Manchester City, Newcastle, Manchester United should be the top 3 you buy because they have good fixtures this week. You can also look to plan potentially for game week 35, where Chelsea and Spurs, of course, have their double as well. Then in terms of captaincy, Salah is number 1. I think it's pretty close between him and Saka now because of the Wolves injury crisis that is going on. Eze is next in at number 3. If I knew Havertz was going to start both, he'd be higher, but just that slight risk means I've got Havertz at 4. And then we've got Dominic Solanke in at number 5. Again, Aston Villa have just played on Thursday evening. Wolves have got a bit of an injury crisis, which is both the games for Solanke, so I don't hate that. But Salah is number 1 for me. Saka number 2, very close now, and don't mind that as a punt. I don't really want to captain anyone that's not those two, but Eze, Havertz, Solanke could be decent differentials if you need one. Now, having a look at those top players to buy, we are focused on the double this week. Of course, as I've just mentioned, if you're not playing your free hit this week or you're not wildcarding next week, then maybe players like Manchester City, Newcastle, Manchester United, like Isak, like Bruno Fernandes, like Gordon, like Foden, like Gavardio potentially start to come into this list. But about 75% of you are literally just looking at this week. So that is why this tier list, this ranking looks at just this week. In goal, Alisson is number 1, Raya is number 2. Now, most of you might not have a spare slot for these two. So Henderson comes in number 3. I've actually got the Sheffield United goalkeeper, number 4. I don't like Pickford at all. With the Wolves injury crisis, I wouldn't go to Jose Sarr. So number 4 is actually the Sheffield United keeper. Burnley at home, Manchester United away as the 2 fixtures they've got there. It's not the end of the world, but I do think Henderson outside of Alisson and Raya is probably the goalkeeper I would own on a free hit if you have a spare Crystal Palace spot. Moving into defence, we've got Gabriel number 1, Virgil van Dijk number 2, and I'm still going with Ben White over Saliba. As I've just spoken about earlier with the Liverpool assets, if you want to ask about Robertson or Trent, I've done a little section earlier in case you skipped it on Liverpool, who I think is likely to start both in the double and why. If I was buying a defender this week, I would just go and buy Virgil van Dijk. Munoz, because we aren't expecting Aït-Nouri to start both or maybe even one. Munoz of Crystal Palace is number 4. I've gone with him over Mitchell, despite Mitchell getting recent attacking returns, just because some of the attacking threat he's shown if you do watch the games recently. And then with Aston Villa playing on Thursday, with the Wolves injury crisis, I've got Senesi and his attacking threat in at number 5. I don't love the Bournemouth defence at the moment, and I don't love their double, but there aren't many defenders I'd actually advocate buying this week. Now, moving into midfield, Mo Salah is number 1, Saka number 2, Eze number 3. That is the same as the captaincy ranking, with Kai Havertz coming in number 4. The others to consider is Luis Diaz. He did only play 65 minutes on Thursday evening, so should, fingers crossed, start both in the double because I own him. And then a bit of a differential punt I've added a number 6 is Brereton Diaz of Sheffield United. Burnley at home, Manchester United away. He's had 4 goals since he's come in January for them. Could be a decent differential if you've already used up your Liverpool, your Crystal Palace, your Arsenal spots already on your team this week. Moving up front, there's not really 5 I'd pick, but Solanke is number 1 over Darwin because of security of minutes. Mateta comes in a close number 3, of course, because of Cunha's injury. He is not in this list anymore, so McBurney goes in number 4. Decent fixtures, should be on penalties for them as well. And returning from injury is Calvert-Lewin, but I would buy him with a lot of caution because of the injury record that he's had. To be honest, I think most of you will be looking to play a 3-5-2 this week, potentially 3-4-3 if you are not on a free hit. But if you're on free hit this week, 3-5-2. These are the top players I should buy. With some of the injuries, the amount of players that I've got to recommend is actually getting pretty thin this week. Now, with all the European fixtures out the way, with the press conferences out the way, I can give you a better look at a free hit draft if you are playing it this week. Sorry it's taken so long. I did post a sort of first draft earlier on in the week, but here is it now, the press conferences, because I couldn't do a real job of putting a free hit draft together for you all unless I had all that information. So, because I've used up my triple Crystal Palace elsewhere, we have gone with the Sheffield United goalkeeper in Gribic as the option we've gone with. Burnley at home, Manchester United away, maybe a clean sheet against Burnley, maybe some save points in there. You could go Neto, I've got on the bench. You could go Jose Sarr if you fancy that as well. Into defence, it's Gabriel, it's Munoz, and it's Virgil van Dijk. Gabriel, Van Dijk, I like their security. I would go with them over the attacking fullbacks because of the security of minutes. And they both have a decent bit of goal threat as well. Then Munoz for his attacking threat. Into midfield, double Arsenal, double Liverpool, right? I love Havertz. I like Luis Diaz. And then Saka and Salah feel like no-brainers. And Salah is the captaincy on the free hit. Bukayo Saka with the vice-captain. And then I think the last 3 pick themselves. Eze looks like a much better pick than Elise at the moment, just for security of minutes. Mateta up front, and then, of course, Dominic Solanke as well. I do think Mateta is a decent pick, particularly with Cunha out. There's not much debate there. Looking at the bench, McBurney is the sub-forward, Mykolenko and Senesi, as we spoke about, particularly with Senesi as a potential differential in defence, with Neto in goal. But basically, the goalkeeper is completely up to you. You could go Pickford, you could go Neto, you could go Jose Sarr. It's probably the last spot that you should be picking. Hope they make some saves. Chance of a clean sheet is very low. So this is probably where I'd go if you're looking for a free hit this week. And then looking finally at my team for this weekend. Son out, Eze in, feels almost locked. I may as well do it now. I haven't done it now, but I may as well. That transfer feels locked in. Would be very, very surprised if anything causes that. Maybe an early bit of Palace team news or something on Saturday. But yeah, there was nothing to worry me in the press conference. So Son to Eze feels, locked in for me. The issue I've got now is what to do with my second free transfer. I have 2 options. Haaland to Darwin, or it won't be Zabani out, as some of you pointed in my team selection video. Doughty out to a Virgil van Dijk and bench Zabani. So I have a combination option of Van Dijk and Haaland or Darwin and Zabani. Let me know in the comments before I give my opinion, which of those would you prefer? Haaland and Van Dijk or Zabani and Darwin? Now, with Haaland basically being a doubt, I'm now favouring going back and doing the Darwin move slightly more than the Virgil van Dijk move because I'm not massively sure on a Liverpool clean sheet, not massively sure on a clean sheet for anyone, to be honest. And I just don't want to be left if Haaland doesn't feature at all in this double with, well, in his single fixture, being left with, I know Palmer's fine, he'd come off my bench, but I don't massively want to be left with that, to be honest, with some of the free hit teams that I see going around. So I haven't decided. I might see if we get any news on Haaland being in the squad for the FA Cup semi-final going into the deadline on Saturday morning before I make up my mind. But at the moment, I think Haaland to Darwin is slightly better with Son to Eze. But let me know what you prefer. Yeah, so is it Haaland, Van Dijk, or is it Zabani and Darwin as your combination? I won't be taking a hit this week because Cunha's out. There's no chance I take a hit. 2 free transfers, Son to Eze, and then that other move. The bench looks pretty weak. There's no chance I bench boost. Salah will be my captain this week. Saka, because of the Wolves injuries and then Chelsea just conceding goals at the moment, is slightly tempting. Is slightly tempting for sure, but I don't think I'm going to go there. Pretty sure it will remain on Salah, who is, of course, at the top of my captaincy ranking this week. So that is all for the deadline decisions video. There will be a deadline stream 2 hours before the deadline. Reminder, there is no early kickoff. So if you're in the UK, get a bit of a lie-in tomorrow. 11:30 start to the stream until 1:30 p.m. That is a 2-hour deadline stream. I will be looking for any early Manchester City team news, potentially if Erling Haaland's going to start, making my final transfers. I'll have any updates to the free hit draft, answering all your questions as well. It has been scheduled, so click the link above or find that stream and click notify for when it does go live. Any questions you have, you can ask on that stream, or you can drop it in the comment section down below on this video. 1,000 likes is the aims. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if you are new around here, and I'll be back again very soon.